What if one of the world's most notorious scandals is only the tip of a far darker iceberg? Imagine an underworld where a billionaire predator, a former president, and forbidden science intersect, human cloning, soulless bodies, and occult forces lurking behind the scenes. This is the theory some investigators and insiders whisper about. In this narrative, Jeffrey Epstein's crimes were not just about power and lust, but part of a twisted grand plan, from breeding a super race of humans in secret labs to creating cloned bodies without souls as vessels for something not of this world. Allegedly, Epstein's elite connections, including Bill Clinton, were more than social, they were pieces of a puzzle that links political power to unholy experimentation. Today, we pull back the veil on these claims. Sources suggest that Epstein's activities concealed ghastly scientific projects and even spiritual subjugation, orchestrated by forces some would call archonic or satanic. In the next few minutes, we'll expose leaked plans, witness testimonies, ancient warnings, and esoteric clues. Prepare to question everything: the nature of power, the reality of secret cloning programs, and whether dark spiritual entities pull the strings of our world's elites. This journey will be bold, unnerving, and eye-opening, a dive into the hidden connections between Epstein, Clinton, and the realm of the web of the wealthy and powerful. Our story centers on three seemingly unrelated elements: Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and human cloning. At first glance, Epstein was a disgraced financier running an international sex trafficking ring, and Clinton a former US president who moved in Epstein's social circle. But beneath the surface lies a web of allegations hinting at something far more sinister. Jeffrey Epstein, long before his 2019 arrest and death, cultivated friendships with the world's elite, royalty, scientists, politicians. Bill Clinton was among them, appearing in Epstein's flight logs and photographed in his company. Clinton insists he knew nothing of Epstein's crimes and that he never set foot on Epstein's notorious private island. Yet the coincidences and ties are hard to ignore. Epstein's own accusers have placed Clinton in Epstein's presence multiple times. For example, Juliet Bryant, an aspiring model from South Africa, recalls being lured into Epstein's orbit with the promise of meeting Clinton. In 2002, Bryant met Epstein during a trip Clinton and other celebrities took to Africa, a trip aboard Epstein's private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express. She shook Bill Clinton's hand and was starstruck. Epstein seemed legitimate because he was surrounded by such famous figures. Clinton gave him credibility, Juliet later said. This credibility was the bait that led her into what she describes as a nightmare of abuse and entrapment. But why would a former president associate so closely with a man like Epstein? Was it merely poor judgment, or part of a deeper alliance? We know Epstein loved to collect powerful friends and perhaps leverage their secrets. Clinton, for his part, has a history of public service and public scandal, but nothing on the surface links him to fringe science or the occult. Yet, as we'll explore, both men had intersections with the world of human cloning and spiritual symbolism, one openly, the other in shadows. Before diving into the mysterious, let's establish a baseline of fact. Human cloning was a hot-button issue during Clinton's presidency, and Epstein had a documented obsession with genetics and improving humanity. Part 1: Playing God, Cloning Experiments and Presidential Decrees. In February 1997, the world was stunned by the announcement of Dolly the sheep, the first mammal cloned from an adult cell. The breakthrough raised an immediate ethical alarm. Just weeks later, President Bill Clinton took a public stand. Warning against the temptation to play God, Clinton banned federal funding for human cloning research. He even urged privately funded scientists to halt any work in that arena until the implications could be reviewed. Each human life is unique, born of a miracle that reaches beyond laboratory science, Clinton declared, emphasizing that any discovery touching on human creation is a matter of morality and spirituality as well. It was a strong moral stance, aligning with public sentiment that science should not replicate ourselves like photocopies. On the surface, Clinton positioned himself as a defender of bioethics, effectively outlawing human cloning in the US during his administration. Yet, conspiracy researchers point out an intriguing irony. Just a few years after Clinton denounced playing God with cloning, he began rubbing shoulders with a man who seemed eager to do exactly that. Jeffrey Epstein, in the 2000s, quietly nurtured his own scientific ambitions far away from public scrutiny. Epstein had a deep fascination with genetics, eugenics, and yes, cloning technology. Reports indicate that after his first conviction in 2008, Epstein became fixated on seeding the human race with his DNA. According to a major investigation by the New York Times, revealed in 2019, Epstein told prominent scientists about his plan to impregnate 20 women at a time at his New Mexico ranch in order to seed humanity with his genes. The ranch, a 33,000 square foot secluded property called Zorro Ranch, was to be the site of this secret eugenics program. The scheme, described as part of Epstein's interest in transhumanism, was essentially an updated version of eugenics, the discredited idea of engineering a superior human race. Epstein's own lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, no stranger to controversy himself, said he was appalled by Epstein's genetic ambitions, explicitly invoking the Nazis' use of eugenics in the 1930s. Epstein cultivated connections with top scientists to further these ends. He poured money into elite institutions, a $6.5 million donation to Harvard to fund an evolutionary dynamics program, sponsorship of conferences with luminaries like Stephen Hawking, and even a gift to the World Transhumanist Association. Among Epstein's circle were biologist George Church, Nobel-winning physicist Murray Gell-Mann, and cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker, who later called Epstein an intellectual imposter. Sources suggest Epstein's charm and money bought him access to cutting-edge research, perhaps even off-the-record projects. We have no hard proof Epstein succeeded in any cloning or breeding experiment. In fact, the New York Times found little evidence his wild plan progressed beyond talk. But the intent was clearly there. Epstein hoped to play God in his own way, even as Clinton publicly condemned such hubris. This juxtaposition fuels the theory: did Epstein continue the human cloning research in secret, with tacit support or involvement from powerful friends? Clinton banned official cloning research, but could there have been off-the-books experiments going on, protected by political power? It's an open question conspiracy investigators raise. And it doesn't help that Bill Clinton's own former national security advisor, the late Sandy Berger, once infamously stole classified documents from the National Archives, including documents about terrorist threats. Some ask, were there other secrets being protected during the Clinton years, possibly related to bioresearch? While that remains speculation, it's undeniable that by the early 2000s, Epstein and Clinton were aligned socially, flying together on humanitarian trips and sharing private time. In 2002 and 2003, Clinton flew on Epstein's jet at least 4 times to Europe, Asia, and Africa. If Epstein was running shadowy science projects, might he have sought cover or support from friends in high places? Clinton's name, after all, gave Epstein credibility and protection in the eyes of many, including unwitting victims like Juliet Bryant. Part 2: The credibility of a president. Clinton's curious ties to Epstein. For a moment, let's put aside the science and look at the human element connecting Epstein and Clinton. On the record, Bill Clinton acknowledges he was friendly with Epstein in the early 2000s, to the extent of cadging rides on the financier's private plane. Jeffrey Epstein, in the 2000s, quietly nurtured his own scientific ambitions far away from public scrutiny. Epstein had a deep fascination with genetics, eugenics, and yes, cloning technology. Reports indicate that after his first conviction in 2008, Epstein became fixated on seeding the human race with his DNA. According to a major investigation by the New York Times, revealed in 2019, Epstein told prominent scientists about his plan to impregnate 20 women at a time at his New Mexico ranch in order to seed humanity with his genes. The ranch, a 33,000 square foot secluded property called Zorro Ranch, was to be the site of this secret eugenics program. The scheme, described as part of Epstein's interest in transhumanism, was essentially an updated version of eugenics, the discredited idea of engineering a superior human race. Epstein's own lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, no stranger to controversy himself, said he was appalled by Epstein's genetic ambitions, explicitly invoking the Nazis' use of eugenics in the 1930s. Epstein cultivated connections with top scientists to further these ends. he poured money into elite institutions, a $6.5 million donation to Harvard to fund an evolutionary dynamics program, sponsorship of conferences with luminaries like Stephen Hawking, and even a gift to the World Transhumanist Association. Among Epstein's circle were biologist George Church, Nobel-winning physicist Murray Gell-Mann, and cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker, who later called Epstein an intellectual imposter. Sources suggest Epstein's charm and money bought him access to cutting-edge research, perhaps even off-the-record projects. We have no hard proof Epstein succeeded in any cloning or breeding experiment. In fact, the New York Times found little evidence his wild plan progressed beyond talk. But the intent was clearly there. Epstein hoped to play God in his own way, even as Clinton publicly condemned such hubris. This juxtaposition fuels the theory: did Epstein continue the human cloning research in secret, with tacit support or involvement from powerful friends? Clinton banned official cloning research, but could there have been off-the-books experiments going on, protected by political power? It's an open question conspiracy investigators raise. And it doesn't help that Bill Clinton's own former national security advisor, the late Sandy Berger, once infamously stole classified documents from the National Archives, including documents about terrorist threats. Some ask, were there other secrets being protected during the Clinton years, possibly related to bioresearch? While that remains speculation, it's undeniable that by the early 2000s, Epstein and Clinton were aligned socially, flying together on humanitarian trips and sharing private time. In 2002 and 2003, Clinton flew on Epstein's jet at least 4 times to Europe, Asia, and Africa. If Epstein was running shadowy science projects, might he have sought cover or support from friends in high places? Clinton's name, after all, gave Epstein credibility and protection in the eyes of many, including unwitting victims like Juliet Bryant. Part 2: The credibility of a president. Clinton's curious ties to Epstein. For a moment, let's put aside the science and look at the human element connecting Epstein and Clinton. On the record, Bill Clinton acknowledges he was friendly with Epstein in the early 2000s, to the extent of cadging rides on the financier's private plane. All these details, the flights, the island rumors, the hand-holding introduction of Juliet, the bizarre painting, create a picture of Clinton's involvement that is deeper than he acknowledges. Clinton may have been drawn in by Epstein's charisma and money, or Epstein courted Clinton to strengthen his own protection. Perhaps both. Yet, if the darker allegations of cloning and spiritual evil hold any truth, Clinton's role might be even more complex. Was he a participant, an enabler, or a puppet manipulated by forces Epstein served? To answer that, we must venture beyond the confirmed facts, into the realm of the esoteric and hidden, where technology meets the occult. Part 3: Temple of Secrets. Occult symbols on Little St. James. Epstein's power did not only lie in blackmail or money, some say it also lay in ritual and secrecy. Nothing embodies this better than his private island, Little St. James in the Caribbean, infamously nicknamed Pedophile Island, an island of sin by locals and media. Here, far from prying eyes, Epstein reportedly hosted VIP guests and conducted the worst of his abuses. But it's the structures on the island that truly stoke the imagination. The most striking is a cube-shaped building with bold blue and white stripes and what used to be a golden dome on top, a structure that resembles a temple. In photographs taken before 2017, this building looked like something out of a mystic's dream, perched on a hill, bright and incongruous. Observers immediately dubbed it the Temple. Epstein was of Jewish heritage, and some speculated it might be a private synagogue, but the design didn't quite match any traditional house of worship. Others pointed out the dome and ornate look had echoes of Middle Eastern or Mediterranean temples, yet with odd statues, including what looked like golden owls or similar figures, that wouldn't fit a Jewish temple, which forbids graven images. What was this temple used for? Officially, we don't know. Locals told the Associated Press that workers on the island referred to it as a music room with a grand piano and acoustic walls. Epstein was indeed a classically trained pianist. But skeptics ask, why build a music studio so remote from the main compound, on a far end of the island, in a spot that requires a road and stairs to access? And why the heavy door that was installed on it? A contractor who analyzed images noted the wooden door had a reinforcing bar on the outside, implying it was designed to lock people inside, not keep intruders out. That disturbing detail set off a frenzy of speculation. Online communities hypothesized that the temple concealed something nefarious, perhaps an elevator shaft to an underground bunker or dungeon. Rumors flew that beneath the faux temple lay an underground facility for rituals or confinement, essentially an altar to the darkest of crimes. Both the conspicuous building and a smaller structure near it, possibly a second exit, fueled these theories. And indeed, the idea of underground tunnels or rooms on Little St. James isn't far-fetched. Epstein's island had many mysterious square openings and ventilation grates visible on satellite images, suggesting subterranean spaces. Whether or not one believes the island's temple housed occult ceremonies, the very aura of the place was meant to be secretive and exclusive. Only those Epstein trusted absolutely, or controlled absolutely, could come. The island's law speaks of powerful men being ferried over on Epstein's boat, named Lady Ghislaine. It speaks of orgies, of girls coerced into depraved acts, of Prince Andrew sweating and denying allegations that he partook. Attorneys for victims flatly state that many of Epstein's worst crimes happened on that island. Could it be that something even more unearthly happened there too? Some researchers point to the timing and symbolism. Epstein added the Golden Dome on the temple around 2010, then it blew off in Hurricane Irma, 2017, and was never rebuilt, almost like a literal fall of Babylon moment. They note the owlish statues, if that's what they were, bring to mind Moloch, an ancient deity associated with child sacrifice often depicted as a bull or owl in occult lore. At California's Bohemian Grove, another place where elites have private rituals, a giant owl statue is the centerpiece of ceremonies. Some believe Epstein's temple served a similar purpose, a stage for rituals meant to bind participants in shared darkness and perhaps to invoke spiritual entities. These claims remain unproven. But the pieces are suggestive: the layout, the door, the secrecy. We have at least one confirmed occultish item in Epstein's possession, something found not on his island, but in his New York mansion safes. According to reports by law enforcement, during the 2019 raid they found a strange collection of items. Among cash and diamonds, there was a pile of fake foreign passports and a trophy stash of nude photos, and in one safe, a list of names with corresponding codes. Rumor has it, from unverified leaks, that some documents reference mystical concepts. While we must treat that with caution, it's easy to see why this milieu of secrecy, sexual crime, and power has encouraged theories of satanic influence. Epstein's temple stands as a symbol of hidden evil in paradise, a concrete testament to the idea that something ritualistic or otherworldly was happening behind those locked doors. Epstein's secluded private island, Little St. James, above, featured a mysterious boxy temple structure with a golden dome. Its true purpose remains unknown, fueling theories of occult rituals and secret underground chambers. Part for whistleblowers and witnesses, Juliet Bryant's story, and others. Amid these grand claims, it is real human voices that lend both credibility and pathos. We return to Juliet Bryant, whose testimony provides a rare window into Epstein's operations and mindset. After being dazzled by meeting Clinton and others, Bryant accepted Epstein's offer to further her modeling career. She flew to the United States under Epstein's arrangements, only to find herself whisked not to New York City for legitimate work, but to his private Caribbean island. There, Juliet's nightmare truly began. She describes stepping off the seaplane and essentially not seeing another free day for weeks. Epstein allegedly raped her repeatedly over the course of 2 weeks on the island. She was then taken to his Palm Beach estate and abused further, then to his ranch in New Mexico, a global circuit of sexual trafficking that she remained trapped in until around 2004. "I was completely conned," Bryant said later, horrified at how thoroughly Epstein fooled her into thinking he was a legitimate mentor. Juliet Bryant eventually escaped and, much later, found the courage to join other survivors in seeking justice. She filed a lawsuit against Epstein's estate in 2019 detailing her abuse. But more than that, now a grown woman, Bryant is piecing together Epstein's mysterious network, as she calls it. She has publicly questioned why Epstein's lieutenants and enablers, like the assistants who manage the girls, haven't faced charges. And pointedly, she questions why men like Clinton, who lent Epstein social cover, have never been truly pressed for answers. Bryant, in standing up, is contributing her piece to a larger puzzle. What did Juliet see or sense beyond the abuse? There are intriguing hints. In one interview, she remarked that Epstein was so evil and capable of so much that even now she struggles daily with the trauma. She also noted Epstein had peculiar habits that betrayed a deeply paranoid streak. For example, at meals he would never eat off a plate served just to him. Instead, he kept platters of food for everyone and would pick from others' plates. She believed he feared being poisoned. This odd behavior suggests Epstein knew he had enemies, perhaps even among his rich peers. Was he afraid someone might silence him because of what he knew or was doing? If Epstein was involved in truly horrific conspiracies, like cloning or occult rituals, it stands to reason he'd be looking over his shoulder at all times. His untimely death in custody, officially a suicide, though many suspect foul play, only reinforces the aura that Epstein's greatest secrets died with him. Other witnesses and insiders have added fragments to the mosaic. Some staff on Little St. James reported that Epstein had a keen interest in electronic surveillance, allegedly wiring his properties with hidden cameras to record VIP guests in compromising acts. This raises the possibility that Epstein was gathering blackmail material, maybe as insurance or as part of a bigger honey trap operation. If true, those tapes, and where they ended up, could be key to why certain people remain protected. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's confidant and co-conspirator, was said to joke that Epstein was like James Bond. But more chilling is the anecdote that Maxwell showed off a room full of surveillance monitors to a visitor, quipping about how many powerful people they had on tape. Could Bill Clinton have been among them? We do know that one of Epstein's pilots testified that Clinton flew on the jet, but did not observe improper behavior. Yet the pilot did notice an unusual assembly of people on certain flights, young women who seemed out of place among dignitaries. In the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, even a massage table from Epstein's island was hauled into the courtroom as an exhibit, a tangible symbol of the depravity. But where are the whistleblowers about the scientific side of Epstein's activities? Interestingly, one scientist, Dr. J. Epstein, no relation, at Harvard, claimed Epstein spoke to him about cryogenically freezing his head and penis. Yes, Epstein apparently wanted to have his head and genitals frozen after death, perhaps to be revived or studied in the future. This bizarre wish fits Epstein's pattern of seeking scientific immortality. It's not cloning per se, but it rhymes with the goal of conquering death. As for cloning experiments, no one from Epstein's inner circle has publicly come out to say, yes, we were making clones in the lab. However, there have been whispers. One rumor suggests Epstein was funding secret work in gene editing or IVF technologies at a Southwest clinic near his ranch. Another claims he was intrigued by the idea of creating genetically modified perfect children. These remain allegations, mentioned in passing by journalists and contacts who spoke anonymously to the press. If any women were ever impregnated with Epstein's sperm in a bid to create a crop of offspring, none have come forward. Perhaps any such program was halted early or existed only in Epstein's fantasies. But consider Juliet Bryant's experience through a different lens. Epstein abused her at the very ranch where he dreamt of a baby farm. She was mid-20s, of excellent health, an attractive model. Is it possible Epstein also coerced or planned to coerce victims into participating in his breeding project? It's speculation, but a ghastly one, turning victims into vessels for his progeny. That Juliet has become a truth-teller now is significant. If more survivors speak and share notes, perhaps more strange remarks Epstein made about wanting lots of babies, etc., will surface. In sum, the human witnesses give us critical pieces. Epstein was evil and deceptive. He leveraged famous people like Clinton to ensnare victims. He was paranoid of being killed, and he was deeply involved in scientific conversations far beyond a layman's interest. To build on those pieces, let's turn to the final layer of this puzzle, the spiritual or metaphysical dimension. Some say that behind men like Epstein, and even behind powerful figures like Clinton, lurk unseen puppet masters, forces described in both ancient texts and modern conspiracy lore. Could it be that Epstein and company were not just committing crimes of flesh and blood, but crimes against the soul? Part 5, Archons, Clones, and the Battle for the Soul. To truly grasp the wildest claims about Epstein and Clinton's alleged clone connection, we must step into the esoteric. Here we ask, what if the pursuit of human cloning isn't just a scientific quest, but a spiritual strategy? In fringe circles, there's a theory that cloned humans lack souls, that a being artificially replicated might be biologically alive but spiritually empty, a mere vessel. Such a soulless clone could then be an ideal host for something non-human, call it a demon, an archon, or any disincarnate entity seeking to influence our world. This idea sounds like science fiction, but it's surprisingly widespread in certain esoteric traditions and conspiracy narratives. One source describes clones as brain-powered machines without soul-based consciousness, lacking any true free will or karma. They can mimic basic emotions and memories, but they're essentially puppets. If that's true, one can immediately see why an elite cabal might want to create and deploy clones. A clone of a politician, for instance, could be controlled completely either by human handlers or by something more sinister overshadowing it. The concept of archons comes from ancient Gnostic teachings. Over 1,500 years ago, Gnostic scriptures spoke of powerful non-physical beings, the archons, Greek for rulers, who construct and rule the material world and work to keep human souls trapped in ignorance. They are described as malevolent, deceptive forces, sometimes even as inorganic or machine-like. The Nag Hammadi texts, lost Gnostic Gospels unearthed in 1945, paint archons as demonic overlords. They prevent souls from leaving the material realm, effectively enslaving humanity. In some lore, archons serve as prince of darkness, analogous to Satan. Importantly, archons were said to lack creativity and spirit. They envy humans' divine spark and seek to corrupt or possess what they cannot naturally have. One modern commentary notes archons are more like robots than living beings, an army of automatons who follow orders to deceive mankind. Now, consider how eerily that description matches the idea of a biological robot, a clone. A clone, if truly soulless, would be a perfect vehicle for archonic influence, a human body with no inner divine light, easy to infiltrate and command. And some conspiracy researchers indeed claim that the global elite, sometimes termed the Illuminati or Cabal, have been replacing key people with clones or creating clones to do their bidding. This sounds extremely far-fetched, yet there are entire communities devoted to dissecting public figures' appearances for signs of cloning. They trade supposed evidence like minor changes in facial structure, scars that appear or disappear, odd behavioral glitches, and some claim that many world leaders and celebrities have been cloned. In these narratives, a person who malfunctions on camera, say, a news reporter freezing up with a blank stare, is taken as a possible clone glitch. While much of that is speculative, let's bring it back to Epstein and Clinton. One fringe source boldly asserts, cloning in politics began with Bill Clinton in the 1990s. According to this account, purportedly from insider information, Clinton was the first major politician to have a clone double. The rationale? A clone could be sent to do public events or speeches while the real person is elsewhere, or to take risks on behalf of the original. It even claims clones have been used to cover up arrests or deaths. If a public figure is secretly removed, their clone carries on in the spotlight to prevent public shock. Fantastic as this sounds, the source alleges this tactic has been used increasingly in world governments. In fact, it describes our current public arena as a puppet show where many figures seen on TV are actually clones, playing out roles until a planned disclosure of this truth occurs. They insinuate that white hat, good, factions are fighting behind the scenes, occasionally sabotaging clones, causing those weird malfunctions, as a way to alert the public that something is off. One striking detail, this same source names a man, Todd Madison, and identifies him as a Hillary Clinton's clone handler. It says Madison died mysteriously after media in 2016 began speculating about Hillary's health and unusual behavior. Some might recall Clinton's fainting incident in 2016, which spawned theories of a body double because she reappeared looking surprisingly perky an hour later. The implication is that handlers exist to manage and program clones, and if exposed, they are eliminated. Owners of clones, it claims, are wealthy cabal members or those aligned with a transhumanist agenda, who effectively license a clone of a public figure for their own purposes. If Epstein had any role in such a scheme, he might have been one of these facilitators or owners, given his wealth, clandestine facilities like that island or his New Mexico ranch, and interest in human reproduction tech. We must stress, these are allegations from the fringe, not proven fact. However, consider Epstein's penchant for controlling others and his fascination with altering human life. It's not entirely outlandish that he might have explored cloning technology as part of extending his power. Imagine the leverage of secretly creating a clone of, say, a rival or an asset. Or the ultimate ego trip of cloning oneself to achieve a kind of false immortality or omnipresence. Epstein reportedly once mused about having his head and genitals preserved. He clearly couldn't accept his mortal limitations. Creating counterfeit life would have been the next forbidden frontier. From a spiritual perspective, if Epstein was as depraved as we know in the physical realm, one could argue he invited something demonic to operate through him. There's a term, louche, used in esoteric circles to describe the energy of human suffering and fear, basically a psychic food for negative entities. As one author put it, louche is a hyperdimensional energy given off by the human soul when traumatized. The archons parasitically feed on it. Think about that, every act of abuse Epstein committed, every child or young woman terrorized, would generate enormous trauma energy, a banquet of louche for any unseen parasites. If Epstein and those like him were knowingly or unknowingly serving such entities, it casts their atrocities in an even more horrific light, ritualized feeding. Some survivors of satanic ritual abuse, SRA, have described ceremonies where torment is orchestrated specifically to summon dark forces or gain their favor. Epstein's systematic abuse might not have been overtly ritualistic, no public evidence of black masses on the island, for example, but the effect, masses of suffering, was the same. Some believe Epstein's elite friends partake in secret satanic practices, others say that is a distraction, and the real puppet masters are these archonic forces using greed and lust to ensnare people like Epstein and Clinton. Even in the Bible's book of Revelation, there's an eerie line that resonates here, and it was given unto him to give life unto the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Revelation 13 verse 15. Some interpret this prophecy as a warning of soulless beings or AI in the end times, an image made alive, demanding loyalty under threat of death. It's hard not to draw a parallel to the idea of living clones, images of people, animated perhaps by dark authority. Are we already seeing precursors of that in our society? It's a chilling thought that blurs science and spirit, much like our entire story. Climax, a paradigm-shifting revelation. Step back and gather the threads. A billionaire sex trafficker obsessed with engineering humanity, a former president entwined in his affairs, claims of clandestine cloning projects, and hints of demonic influence lurking in the shadows. What picture emerges? It's almost unthinkable, a paradigm-shifting revelation, that human society might be manipulated at the highest levels by a hybrid of corrupt science and dark spirituality. If the allegations hold any truth, it means some of our leaders and idols could be literal puppets, cloned bodies animated by agendas that have no empathy, no soul. It suggests that behind scandals like Epstein's lies something even bigger, an ancient struggle between those who respect the sanctity of life and those who would usurp creation itself, perhaps in service to invisible masters. Consider what it would mean if Epstein's true role was as a facilitator for an occult cabal, providing not just sexual blackmail to control politicians, but possibly flesh and blood avatars for inhuman powers to inhabit or control. In such a scenario, Bill Clinton's involvement with Epstein might have exposed him, wittingly or not, to these forces. Was Clinton, once the most powerful man on earth as US president, himself compromised or controlled by something beyond the normal political pressures? When he championed the ban on human cloning publicly, was it a genuine moral stance or a way to ensure such research went underground where only a select few, like Epstein and his backers, could pursue it away from scrutiny? Think of the implications: soulless clones placed in governments, enacting policies that serve not the people but a hidden agenda, masses of trauma inflicted to generate negative energy to feed dark entities, technology used to cheat death or create false life, perverting nature's design. This is the stuff of dystopian novels and horror films, yet elements of it creep into our reality with surprising frequency. We already clone animals, AI can simulate human speech and appearance uncannily, world leaders sometimes behave in ways that seem inexplicable, almost mechanical. The paradigm shift here is accepting that the boundary between science and the supernatural might be an illusion, that those old tales of demons and modern tales of clones could be describing facets of the same phenomenon, an assault on human autonomy and spirit. In this climactic understanding, Jeffrey Epstein was not just a perverted financier, he was a conduit. Through him flowed money, influence, and human lives to serve a project of control. And Bill Clinton, and others in Epstein's orbit, be it Prince Andrew, or scientists at Harvard, or unnamed billionaires, were perhaps both beneficiaries and victims of this grand scheme. Beneficiaries, in that Epstein provided them pleasures, secrets, or even replacement bodies if one buys the clone theory. Victims, in that associating with Epstein meant entanglement with whatever dark web he was spinning, making them susceptible to blackmail or spiritual decay. Juliet Bryant's words ring louder at this peak. Epstein and Maxwell were more powerful and dangerous than people could ever imagine. More dangerous indeed, if the forces behind them transcend conventional crime. Now, imagine for a moment a specific revelation, that deep within a lab, perhaps under Zorro Ranch's desert soil or beneath the Little St. James Temple, authorities discover cryogenic tanks or cloning vats, containing partially grown human forms. Imagine they find dossiers linking those clones to real individuals in high office. A shockwave would hit the world. Everything from trust in government to our understanding of the soul would be shaken. This is the kind of paradigm shift we're flirting with. It hasn't happened, at least not yet, at least not publicly. But our journey through these allegations prepares us for the possibility. As the saying goes, the truth will out. And if any part of this is true, its eventual emergence could upend civilization's foundations. Conclusion, truth, empowerment, and spiritual awakening. We set out to explore an explosive theory, that Jeffrey Epstein's and Bill Clinton's destinies intersected with human cloning and spiritual darkness. We navigated through verified facts, flights, bans on cloning, witness testimonies, and through murkier waters of speculation, hidden labs, archons, soulless bodies. What can we conclude? Certainly, Epstein's real story was deeper than mainstream headlines admitted. He moved in circles of extraordinary scientific ambition and depravity. He collected the powerful and perhaps compromised them. Clinton's presence in Epstein's saga is a stark reminder that even those at the pinnacle of power can be pulled into bizarre and dark currents. And where power concentrates, some suspect the age-old battle between good and evil also intensifies. Ultimately, whether or not one believes every detail of the cloning conspiracy or iconic influence, this journey compels us to ask urgent questions. How much do we really know about those who lead us? Could advances in technology be twisted to undermine humanity in ways we're not prepared for? Are we, as a society, ignoring signs of a spiritual sickness in our elite institutions? As we close, we must acknowledge these ideas are uncomfortable and controversial. Skeptics will rightly demand more evidence. But consider Juliet Bryant and other survivors. Their truth was ignored for years, their credibility attacked, yet over time the world could no longer deny Epstein's evil. In the same vein, the more outlandish claims might one day prove to contain kernels of truth we're not yet ready to face. One thing is certain, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Exposing hidden agendas, however wild, is an exercise in vigilance. If indeed a secret project to clone humans or to enslave souls exists, bringing it to light is the first step to stopping it. The power of these dark schemes lies in our disbelief and apathy. So we end with a call to awareness, a spiritual wake-up call. Reflect on this. Why do stories of soulless elites and demonic puppeteers resonate with so many today? Perhaps because, at a symbolic level, they speak to a truth we all sense, that our world often lacks genuine empathy and higher guidance, as if those in charge are missing something vital. Whether that is literally a soul or figuratively a conscience, the effect is similar. It's time for each of us to reclaim our own soul's vision, to look past the smoke and mirrors of the media and demand transparency. The alleged connections between Epstein, Clinton, cloning, and the occult urge us to not just gawk at scandal, but to seek a higher understanding of the forces at play in our world. we are reminded of an ancient principle found in many traditions, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of darkness in this world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in high places. Perhaps that old scripture had it right. As we close this documentary narrative, ask yourself, if these hidden battles are raging, what role will you play? Will you turn away in disbelief, or stay curious and watchful? The truth may be uncomfortable, even frightening. But it is only by confronting the darkness that we can hope to overcome it. In exposing what might be humanity's greatest horror, the deliberate creation of life without soul, and the surrender of our world to unseen tyrants, we also shine a light of hope. Because exposure is the beginning of defeat for any evil. With knowledge comes power, and with power, the chance to reclaim our world and our spiritual sovereignty. Stay awake. Stay aware. The story isn't over. In fact, it may be just beginning. The next chapters will be written by whistleblowers who come forward, investigators who refuse to give up, and everyday people who choose to look with clear eyes. The truth, no matter how strange, seeks the light. And perhaps, in the end, the most shocking revelations will lead not to despair, but to a great awakening of human consciousness, where no secret stays buried and no soul can be bought or cloned.